Hello everyone, welcome back to the Red Team training series. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at hiding Linux processes. Now this particular technique is going to fall under defense evasion, and of course this course or this series isn't designed for or wasn't designed with Linux in mind, but again this is one of the techniques that's really important because you will come across Linux systems, and after you've essentially established an initial foothold on the target system, the one thing that you need to be aware of is the fact that whatever processes you run or whatever vector you utilize for initial access will be visible to any administrators on the system. And again, you have to be very tactful in regards to what you're running. Now, again, as I've mentioned before, when dealing with Windows, there are a lot of steps involved when you're dealing with a Windows environment, from initial access to persistence to evading defenses or any type of, defense system, regardless of whether it may be an antivirus solution or an intrusion detection system. When you're dealing with Linux systems, you're primarily going to have a much simpler experience than you would have had with Windows. And one of the key techniques that falls under defense evasion for Linux is the process of hiding Linux processes so that administrators or security analysts can't actually identify any anomalies within the process tree. Right, so in regards to what we will be covering in this video specifically, we'll take a look at how to hide Linux processes with libprocesshider. All right, so again, I'm just going to go through defense evasion and the definition of defense evasion. And this is from the MITRE website. So defense evasion consists of techniques that adversaries use to avoid detection throughout their compromise. The techniques used for defense evasion include uninstalling or disabling security software, or obfuscating and encrypting data and scripts. Adversaries also leverage and abuse trusted processes to hide and masquerade their malware. Other techniques are cross-listed here, etc. Right, so we are going to be focusing primarily on hiding and masquerading our processes or the actions that we perform on the target system. And in this particular case, we are going to our scenario is fairly simple. The scenario is that we have just exploited or gained access to a Linux server that's being used by the company to host a web application, and we have got root access. So again, our job now is to hide our process, to establish some form of a backdoor, and then hide that particular process when it is running and whenever it is executed. So with that being said, let's take a look at the practical aspect of this video now. Alright, so I'm back on my Kali VM and I've logged into the target system. You can see it's root at Red Team Linux, and I'm just going to display the operating system information, but let's start off with the distribution version. You can see it's Ubuntu 20.04, and if we enumerate the kernel information, we can see that it's running version 5.4.73, and of course this is running on LXC, but again we know that it's running Ubuntu, we know the kernel version, we've obtained root access. However, again, if we list out our process tree, you can see that we have quite a few processes, but we have Apache running. As I said, this particular web server is being utilized to actually host a web application for the company. And you can see we have our connection here that we are actually utilizing. So this current session is being facilitated through SSH. However, as you know, that is a big security flaw, primarily because again, if an analyst or the administrator opens up the process tree here, they'll actually be able to identify that hey, there's someone on SSH and they're using the root user. That's a bit of an anomaly, right? Now, of course, we can use libprocesshider to essentially hide SSH connections, but again, that will be an issue, or it may raise a few flags, because again, administrators will go through the process tree and identify or actually pick up that the SSH service isn't being, or the SSH connection isn't being picked up in the process tree. So that's where libprocesshider comes into play. So again, the GitHub repository or this GitHub repository will be linked in the description section, so you can actually check it out for yourself. And it is fairly simple. It is fairly simple in regards to how it works. And again, you can see it essentially allows you to hide a process under Linux using the LD preloader. And you can see that the GitHub repository contains a processhider.c script, which we actually need to compile with GCC. So again, you need to have GCC on the target system. And again, it then provides you with instructions as to how you can go ahead and load the global dynamic linker, or load libprocesshider with the global dynamic linker. Now, I just want to explain a few things about how this works. But before we do that, I'm just going to clone the repository onto the target. And we're going to do this within the temp directory. So tmp, just so that we don't save anything where it doesn't belong. And we're just going to say git clone, and we're going to paste it in there. All right, so there we are, it's pasted, and we can open up the repository, and we have a few files. Disregard the evil script, Python script. Again, this is used to actually demonstrate how this particular tool or utility works. And again, we need to follow out the instructions for compilation. So again, let me open up the GitHub repository. So these are the commands here. We need to make, and then GCC, and these are the compilation instructions here. So it's fairly simple. So again, we can say make, and it's going to run the GCC compilation instructions. And now if we list out the contents of this directory, you can now see we have the shared object libprocesshider.so. However, we have, of course, compiled it without actually analyzing the C file. So I just wanted to, again, take you through the compilation process first. But let's remove the shared object, because that already contains the compiled code. Now, this tool is on a per use case basis, or on a per tool use case basis, in that you can only hide one process, or you can only hide one process at a time, or each or this particular shared object can only be used to hide one particular process that again we can configure based on specific parameters of the tool that we're trying to utilize. So for example, again, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, that SSH is really not the best option when it comes down to getting access to a target system, for various reasons, of course, on Linux. And we have to find a way of actually masquerading our access to the target system. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a Python script that will actually provide us with a reverse shell that we can utilize. So again, I'm just going to open up a Vim here, and I'll call it shell.py. Right, or py, and I have the reverse shell code here. So it's a Python 3 script, and of course you require that whenever if you're going to be creating Python 3 scripts, the target needs to have Python 3. Alternatively, you can also use C code. So I'm just going to copy this, and you can see it contains the actual Kali IP address here and the port to connect to. Now you can also do the same with Empire, and on your C2 server you can actually provide your C2 server your actual C2 server details in regards to the listener. So for example, if it was a HTTP listener, we could change the code here and again provide the address and the port to connect back to. But in this case, we're just going to be utilizing Netcat, and that's going to keep things much simpler. So I'm just going to copy that code, and I'm just going to paste it in here, right? And what this code does is fairly simple. It essentially connects to the IP here, the remote IP, and the port, and of course this particular system should actually be listening for a connection. And once it receives a connection, it's going to run the following command. In this case, it's going to run bash, right? So we should get a bash session with the user, or with the user privileges that this script is actually run by. So we can save this, right? And let's just take a look at how this works, right? So I'm just going to open up a new terminal on my Kali VM here, and I'm going to say netcat nvlp1234. And now if I execute this particular shell script, so I say, again, let me just provide it with executable permissions. So chmod plus x shell.py, and I say shell.py, and I hit enter. You can now see on the target, we get access via a reverse connection or a reverse shell. And again, we can pretty much do whatever we were doing. However, again, let me just terminate this connection, and I'm just going to open up tmux here just to show you what this looks like. So I'll open up another session here, and again, this is on the target. So I'll go back into my first tab here, or tab 0, and I'm just going to launch that particular script again. So I'm going to say shell.py, and you can see it's saying connection refused. So I'm just going to set up my listener here, and I'll launch it again. And you can see that it connects back. So if I go back into my first tab and I use a tool like PS, or again, that'll just display the process tree, and I display all the processes, you can see that this process again is also being captured within the process tree. And this is the process that we want to hide. All right. So what that means is once we get our reverse shell, we can exit out of SSH. And we can then, of course, utilize this particular shell here for our access. However, we also need to be sure that this reverse shell is hidden from the process tree, so that an administrator or a security or anyone responsible for security on the target system will not be able to identify this particular process, right? And that's where the libprocesshider tool comes into play. So what I'll do is I'll head back into this particular tab here. Let me just terminate the reverse shell, and there we are, that's terminated. And let's take a look at libprocesshider now. So let me explain exactly what's happening here. Now, when you just clone the repository, you'll have the C code for the libprocesshider or processhider. And this is essentially C code for a shared object. Right now, a shared object is similar to a DLL on Windows systems. They're again called by particular programs or scripts or utilities. So for example, if I use the case of a DLL, Windows DLLs are utilized to extend functionality of programs. So for example, if someone is developing a program on Windows, and they want to interact with the kernel or the network stack, they can call upon pre-built Windows APIs that will allow their program to do that. So they don't have to write that again, or they don't have to write code to do that. And again, as we've already seen in the past, we can utilize or we can exploit certain DLLs that Windows programs call and make the program execute particular code when that program is executed. In this case, what we're doing is fairly similar. However, again, we're utilizing or creating a shared object called a processhider or libprocesshider, if you will. And again, let me just open up the code here. So libprocesshider, for some reason it's not actually, there we are. I'll just say vim processhider, and there we go. So we can see that right here, provided as in the form of a comment, we can see that every process with this name will be excluded. So we need to provide a particular name that again, this particular shared object will actually exclude from the process tree. Right, and now again, in this particular case, we are going to need to customize this to reflect our particular Python script, and it could be any utility. You can block any utility with this particular shared object. So again, I'm just going to modify this to shell.py, because that is what we're going to be using as sort of our backdoor into the system. So we are going to say shell.py, and what this does is it's going to filter out this particular process or any occurrences of a process with shell.py in its name or provided within the command arguments. So again, I'm just going to save, and now we can compile this. So again, what's happening here is we're essentially exploiting or leveraging the preloading functionality on Linux. All right, so the preloading functionality on Linux essentially allows us to load a custom shared library before the other normal system libraries are loaded. This essentially means that if a custom library exports a function with the same signature of the one found in the system library, we are literally able to override it with the custom code in our library, and all the processes will automatically pick our custom one. So that's essentially what's happening here. And this code isn't malicious in the sense that it doesn't interact or interfere with any of the other programs. All it's doing is filtering out that particular name that we provided within the C code. So now that we have an understanding of what that does, we can actually go ahead and compile it. So we're just going to say make, and we'll hit enter, and it's going to run the compilation. It's going to compile the shared object with GCC with the various flags provided here. And again, if we list it out now, you can see we have the libprocesshider.so or shared object. So what we need to do now is, if we take a look at the GitHub repository, we need to essentially append the following libprocesshider.so shared object into the etcld.so preload file. But before we do that, we have to actually move the shared object into the user local libraries directory, which is where we store libraries on Linux. So again, we can just copy it. So I'm going to say copy libprocesshider.so into user. Let me make sure that that is correct. User local library. All right, so local and library, and that's going to copy it there. So now if we list the contents of user local library, you can see that it's going to add it in here. Now that that is done, we now need to again echo that into etcld.so preload. All right, so again, we can just copy this particular command because it's pretty much the same in our environment, and we do that. Now if we cat the content of the ld.so.preload file, which is used for preloading shared libraries, preload, and we're just going to hit enter. You can see that that particular shared object is going to be loaded. All right, so before any other shared library. And again, what that does is it'll ensure that that particular process is filtered. Any process that contains the following word or name shell.py is going to be filtered. So we can actually verify that this has worked by going back into our temp directory, or the root of the temp directory, and then executing the shell.python script. And again, I'll set up the listener here with netcat, and you can see now I'm just going to run it. So shell.py, we hit enter, and let me just verify that we do have a connection. There we are. So ls alps, we can see that we're currently within the temp directory. And now if we head over into our first tab here, and I'm just going to clear that out, and I say psaux, you can see that the shell.python script process is going to be hidden here. So again, let me just scroll up, and you can see in the previous process tree, we had shell.py there. And in this case now, we don't have any shell.py within the process tree, or we don't have any execution of that particular script. So that is hidden fairly well. And yeah, that's essentially how to use the libprocesshider utility to hide a particular process. Now, of course, this is again going to be useful in cases where you want to hide certain processes that could actually deal with data exfiltration, or processes that could be CPU intensive, and you want to hide those processes from the process tree. Again, we can also confirm this with the utility like htop, just to make sure that we don't have it here. And indeed, we can see we don't have any occurrences of shell.py here, or the process for the reverse shell. So what we can do now is we can actually just exit from here. All right, so I've just going to terminate that, and let me just clear my screen here. And yeah, that's pretty much all that I wanted to highlight in this video. Again, as we saw within the process tree, there may be a few processes that essentially call upon the Python 3 binary. And again, what you can do in that case, if you're using Python, is you can actually modify the C code. So again, if I say processhider.c, I can actually change this from shell.py to any occurrences of Python being executed. For example, I can say here user bin python 3, although again, as I said, that may not be the safest thing to do, given that users on the system may also be executing scripts that utilize Python 3. So again, you can modify it based on your requirements, and again, you can then compile it and again follow the same process that we did earlier. That being said, that's going to be it for this video, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.